There's a version of you that never got to breathe. A dream you once held so close it kept you awake at night. But life got loud. Expectations, responsibilities, fear, they all piled on. And somewhere along the way you convinced yourself to settle, you told yourself it's too late. Or maybe you never really had what it takes. But the truth is that unlived life still lives in you. It haunts you in quiet moments. It aches in the silence between distractions. You didn't lose the dream. You buried it, and unless you confront what made you walk away from it, you'll keep feeling like something essential is missing. This isn't about chasing fantasies. It's about honoring the parts of you you've silenced just to survive. You didn't give up the dream because it wasn't worth it. You gave up on yourself because somewhere along the way you started believing you weren't. That belief didn't arrive overnight. It crept in slowly, shaped by rejection, criticism, silence, comparison, or simply surviving. You started dimming your light before others had a chance. You edited your desires to make them more realistic. You convinced yourself to lower the volume of your longing so it wouldn't hurt so much when no one listened. But the dream was never the problem. It asked too much only because you thought you were too little. The moment you abandoned it was the moment you stopped seeing yourself as someone capable of holding something that big, something that alive. This wasn't surrender. It was self-protection, dressed as logic. Because chasing something that matters requires showing up as someone who believes they do. And you stopped believing in that person. You became responsible. You did what was expected. You shrank into the roles that earned approval. You checked all the boxes they gave you, hoping the emptiness inside would eventually be replaced with pride. But it never came because pride doesn't come from pretending. It comes from presence, and yours has been missing. You went missing the moment you gave up on the version of you who still wanted more, who still believed there was something sacred in the pursuit. And it hurts, not just because the dream is gone, but because it wasn't supposed to end like this. You look back, not with regret over what you chased, but with grief over who you stopped being. You abandoned the part of you that was willing to be misunderstood, judged, or even laughed at, the part that was wild enough to try. And that's the deepest kind of pain, not failure, not rejection, but the betrayal of your own fire. You traded your courage for comfort and then wondered why you couldn't breathe. Because dreams are oxygen, and denying them is slow suffocation. What's worse is how well you've hidden it. People think you're doing fine, you're stable, you're capable, you're admired, but they don't see how much of you is still buried under "I'm okay." You carry the ache so well no one even notices, but you do. It stirs when you're alone, it whispers when you're still, and it doesn't let go, because that dream wasn't just an idea. It was a part of you calling out to be realized, and you keep silencing it for the sake of fitting into a life that was never made for your truth. Maybe you think it's too late, that you've gone too far down a different path, that the dream isn't possible anymore. But the truth is, the longer you delay, the heavier the grief becomes. Because every day you avoid it, another piece of you grows numb. That numbness feels like protection, but it's actually erosion. You're not protecting yourself, you're erasing yourself. Quietly, slowly, permanently. Reclaiming the dream isn't about success. It's not about proving anything to anyone. It's about remembering who you were before you learned to hide. It's about standing beside that younger version of you, the one who dared to want more and choosing not to abandon them again. You have no idea what's still possible, because you haven't tried as the version of you who knows what it costs not to. The dream may need to look different now. It may take a new shape or require a new path. That's fine. Growth doesn't mean discarding the dream. It means evolving how you meet it, and you can meet it now with more wisdom, more grit, and a deeper sense of why it matters. You can meet it not with desperation, but with devotion. Not because you need it to save you, but because it's part of saving yourself. You didn't give up the dream. You gave up on the belief that you were allowed to want it. So reclaim it. Not because it's easy, but because it's yours. Fear doesn't always show up as panic. Sometimes, it disguises itself as practicality, as caution, as logic. But underneath it all, it's still fear. And one of the most paralyzing forms of fear is the fear of disappointment. Not just your own, but others. The fear that if you reach too far, you'll fall too hard. The fear that if you want too much, you'll lose even more. So you begin to settle. Not because you've lost all hope, but because convincing yourself to want less feels safer than daring to want more. Settling becomes the armor. It becomes the story you tell yourself to stay protected. This is good enough. At least I have something. Maybe I was never meant for more. But that story isn't safety. It's a slow surrender. Disappointment hurts, no doubt, but the fear of it, that's what chains you, that's what convinces you to stay in relationships that shrink you, jobs that numb you, routines that cage you, because trying and failing feels terrifying. But here's the truth, settling is its own kind of failure. It's the kind that doesn't scream, It whispers, it seeps into your soul day by day, until you wake up and realize you've built a life that looks nothing like you. You were never afraid of dreaming, you were afraid of not reaching it, of being left exposed, vulnerable, raw. Maybe you watched others fall and promised yourself you wouldn't make the same mistake. Or maybe you did fall once, and it shattered something sacred in you. Either way, you decided the cost of disappointment was too high, so you trained yourself to stop reaching. You told yourself it was maturity, that realism was wisdom. But you weren't being wise, you were wounded. You mistook retreat for growth. You learned to make yourself smaller, not out of humility, but out of hurt. Because at some point, trying became synonymous with pain, and you didn't know how to separate the two. But here's what no one tells you. Disappointment doesn't destroy you. Self-abandonment does. You can survive the ache of a dream deferred. What you can't survive is the constant erosion of your own truth. You weren't made to settle. You weren't built for a life that asks you to silence your own longings in exchange for acceptance, approval, or stability. That kind of safety is a cage with padded walls. Comfortable, maybe, but suffocating all the same. Fear of disappointment convinces you that not trying is better than trying and failing. But the truth is, not trying is the slowest way to die. Not physically, but emotionally, spiritually, because every time you say no to something that sets your soul on fire, you're saying yes to something that keeps you small. And the longer you do that, the easier it becomes to forget what fire even feels like. You begin to rationalize the numbness. You convince yourself that this is just how adulthood feels. You call it stability, but deep down you know it's stagnation, and it eats at you. Not all at once, but little by little, in the quiet moments, in the late-night thoughts, in the glance you give to someone who's still chasing what you buried long ago. The fear of disappointment is not the enemy. The belief that you must protect yourself from it at all costs is, because that belief keeps you stuck. It keeps you watching your life from the outside, never fully stepping in. It keeps you playing small, calling it wisdom, when really it's just fear in disguise. The truth is, no one escapes disappointment. Not the bold, not the cautious. The difference is, those who dare will at least have the chance to live fully before the fall, and often they rise stronger because of it. You've been protecting yourself from pain, but in doing so you've also been protecting yourself from growth, from joy, from the raw aliveness that only comes when you risk being hurt. Settling isn't safety, it's stagnation. You don't avoid disappointment by lowering your standards. You avoid it by redefining what it means to try. Trying doesn't mean you'll succeed. It means you're brave enough to show up. It means you value your own potential more than your fear. And that is what freedom looks like. Not the absence of fear, but the presence of self-respect. You don't have to leap without a net, but you do have to stop building a life out of fear and calling it responsibility. The parts of you that long for more aren't naive. They're honest. They're pointing you toward the unlived life still waiting for you. The only way to reclaim it is to let go of the lie that disappointment will destroy you. It won't. But abandoning yourself will. So, let the fear be there. Let it sit beside you, but don't let it steer. You have more strength than you remember, more resilience than you give yourself credit for, and more dreams still alive than you've dared to admit. The life you long for is still possible, but you have to stop confusing comfort with wholeness, because you weren't made to settle. You were made to rise. The ache you feel isn't random. It's the quiet mourning of a life you were meant to live but slowly walked away from. And even if you don't talk about it, even if you've buried it under routines and responsibilities, your soul remembers. It remembers the things you once longed for before fear talked you out of them. It remembers the spark you once carried before the world taught you to dim it. That ache isn't confusion, it's clarity. It's your soul trying to speak through the noise and remind you of what you left behind. And whether you call it intuition, inner knowing, or just a gut feeling, it's real. It never stopped calling you home. You may not remember when you started letting go of your dreams, but your body does. The way your energy dips when you're doing things that don't align with who you are. The way your heart quietly recoils when you settle for a life that's too small for your spirit. The way your joy feels like a memory instead of a presence. These are all signals, not symptoms of failure, but signs of misalignment, of truths left unspoken, of parts of you still waiting to be seen. Sometimes it wasn't even a conscious decision. You didn't say, "I'm done dreaming." It happened gradually. You chose what was expected. You chased what was safe. You followed paths that made sense on paper but never felt right in your bones. And little by little, your soul stopped speaking loudly. But it never went silent. That's the thing about the parts of you that carry truth. They don't die. They wait, quietly, until you're ready to remember. And when the ache becomes too loud to ignore, when you feel that restlessness creeping in, the kind you can't explain with logic, that's not a flaw. That's your soul tapping on the glass, asking, "Is it time yet?" We live in a world that praises sacrifice and calls it maturity. But sacrificing your inner truth isn't growth. It's betrayal. It's not strength to abandon your dreams. It's fear disguised as responsibility. And the more you do it, the more you forget who you are, until you look in the mirror one day and wonder why your eyes don't light up anymore. You may have convinced yourself it's too late, that you've gone too far down this path to turn around. But your soul doesn't believe in dead ends. It believes in detours. It believes in timing. It believes in redemption. And the beauty of what you abandoned is that it's still yours, waiting, patient, ready for you to choose it again. You don't need to start over. You just need to start listening. What did you once love before the world told you it was unrealistic? What made your spirit feel alive before survival took over? What did you dream about in the quiet before doubt crept in? Those answers aren't gone. They're hidden beneath the noise. The more honest you become with yourself, the louder those answers get. And yes, going back to what you abandoned will require courage. It will ask you to disrupt the version of you that settled. It will call you to outgrow the masks you've worn, but it won't destroy you. It will reveal you. It will bring you back to a self that's been there all along, watching, waiting, whispering. The one who never forgot what really matters. Don't ignore the ache just because it's inconvenient. That ache is sacred. It's a compass. It's the most honest thing about you. And the longer you pretend it's not there, the deeper the misalignment grows, until nothing feels fulfilling. Nothing feels true. That's not because life is meaningless. It's because you're not living your meaning. Your soul knows. It always has. And the dreams you think you abandoned, they didn't go anywhere. They became part of your blueprint. The longer you deny them, the more fractured you feel, because you're not here just to survive. You're here to express, to create, to live from a place that's deeply real. And when you stop listening to what your soul remembers, you become a stranger to yourself. So pause. Go still. Ask yourself honestly, what have I left behind that still calls me? What have I buried beneath should and someday? The answers may scare you, but they'll also free you, because reclaiming what you abandoned isn't about chasing fantasies. It's about finally honoring your truth. You don't need permission. You don't need a plan. You just need to start remembering. Start choosing. Start saying yes to the voice inside that never stopped hoping you would come back. Because the longer you ignore your soul, the more lost you become. And the moment you listen, you come home. Not to the life others expected, but to the life that was always meant to be yours. You keep telling yourself you'll come back to it. The dream, the truth, the version of you that once felt alive. You say you'll start tomorrow, when things calm down, when life feels less heavy. But deep down you know you're running out of space to keep postponing your soul. Because life doesn't wait forever, and neither will the parts of you that are tired of being silenced. The truth is, it's not too late to begin again, but it is time. You feel it. In the quiet moments. In the way everything normal feels numb. In the ache that creeps in when you're pretending you don't care anymore. That ache is your invitation, not a punishment, a calling. Reclaiming yourself doesn't mean burning your life down. It means telling the truth. It means being radically honest about what no longer fits, what never did, and what you're no longer willing to sacrifice. Starting again doesn't require perfection. It requires courage, the kind that whispers, maybe I was wrong to let that part of me go. The kind that stands in front of a mirror and admits, I want more than this. That kind of honesty is where new life begins. And while it's never too late, it does become harder the longer you wait. Not because your potential fades, but because your belief in it does. Every time you ignore that inner nudge, you reinforce a story that says, this is all there is. But that story is a lie. You're not stuck, you're scared, and you've let fear become your compass for far too long. Fear tells you you're too old, too behind, too ordinary. But your soul doesn't believe that. Your soul knows time isn't linear, it's sacred, and every second you spend waking up to your truth is a second that rewrites your entire narrative. The version of you who dreamed bigger, felt deeper, and hoped louder didn't die. They just got buried under survival. But they're still there, quietly waiting for your return. And while the door to your real self is always open, it doesn't stay wide forever. The longer you delay, the heavier the mask becomes. The more familiar your numbness feels. Until one day you forget how to feel altogether. Starting again means risking your comfort. It means stepping into uncertainty without a roadmap. But you've done harder things before and survived them. You've lost parts of yourself and still carried on. That same strength can be used to reclaim your life. Not just endure it. You don't need to prove you're worthy of a second chance. You just need to stop pretending you don't want one. The people around you may not understand your shift. They may question your decisions. That's okay. It's not their life to live, it's yours to reclaim. And no one else is responsible for your becoming. You are. You always have been. You just forgot for a while. But remembering is powerful. Remembering makes you dangerous to the stories that kept you small. So ask yourself, what am I waiting for? What version of me am I hoping will get permission to live? The only person who can say yes to that version is you. And you don't need the stars to align or the perfect moment to arrive. You need to decide that you're done waiting, that your aliveness matters, that you'd rather begin clumsily than die with your truth still inside you. Don't let time trick you into thinking it's too late. The seed of who you are is still fertile. Your dreams are still possible. But they won't bloom without your yes. So give yourself permission to begin again. Not in some distant future, but now. Before the noise gets louder. Before you convince yourself you're fine. Before regret becomes your default. It's not too late. It never was. But the longer you delay, the more distant your real self feels. And you deserve to live a life that feels like truth, not performance. So take the first step. Whisper the first yes. You don't need to know what comes next. You just need to stop pretending that staying asleep is safer than waking up, because it's not. The life you were meant to live is still waiting, but it won't wait forever.